Hey, Coach, I'm so excited you found us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe down below, hit the bell up above. That will take care of everything you need. Also, make sure you go down below and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better. If you're looking for resources, if you're looking for a one-stop shop, if you're looking for everything that will make you a better basketball coach, you can find it down below at teachhoops.com. Have a great day.
All right, welcome to Coach Unplugged episode. I have no idea. 1900 and something, probably. It's a lot of podcasts. So Brian, I'm going to have you introduce yourself, kind of explain your basketball journey. I always like doing that at the beginning of podcasts, just so people can kind of know who we're talking to. And then we're going to dive into some kind of culture building things, team building things. And then, like I said before, I got lots of questions for you. So I'm going to turn it over to you and kind of introduce yourself to the audience and kind of your basketball journey.
All right, great. Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast. So a little bit about me. My coaching journey really, I actually started with Special Olympic basketball. Coached that for just about 10 years before I moved into the public school coaching and started at Modified. And I coached Modified for 2 years, and I'm up in Buffalo. And then this summer I'm starting to transition into JV and boys basketball.
Okay. Explain Modified for people that don't know what that is.
So Modified basketball is 7th, 8th grade. Really, a lot of the kids I've been coaching, they're brand new to it. They've never picked up a basketball. So really, we are working on the basic fundamentals of everything. And it's tough because some players have been playing since they've been 5, and others are just picking up. So we really got to balance that.
It's like it's your teacher. It's like in most classrooms, like it's like you have the app, that's why they,
and everything in between.
And everything in between. And everybody has it's what makes it unique, different. That's what my students always ask. Don't you get bored? I said, every year is different. What are you talking about?
Too.
Yeah, it's like, no, I mean the topic. I mean, I said, let's say I teach for 40 years. I'm only teaching this topic 40 times. That's a lot. I get it, but it's like that one thing for 40. That's it. And then but I said it's 40 different ways I have to do it because every class is different. So it's the same with a group of 7th or 8th graders that some can hoop and some can't hoop.
For sure.
Like how do you modify that?
Mm-hmm.
And then this year, so explain. So then you're moving up. What's happening this year?
So moving up to JV, I've been doing a lot of summer league work and open gym stuff, just kind of getting the hang of it. For me, it's kind of nice though. All the kids I'm gonna have coming up to me, I've had in the past. 2 years ago, I have that group coming back to, or I'm coming to them now, and then the 8th graders I had last year are coming up. So a lot of familiarity there, which really helps, I think, everyone involved.
Yeah, summer ball is an interesting cookie, let me just say.
It really is.
It's the reason very little hair, because it's like it's so different.
Either.
Yeah, it's so different. Coach, we're going to the lake for 3 days. It's like, what? You couldn't have told me that 2 days ago? It's like,
hey, you get more notice than I do. It's usually I message them while we're there. I'm like, "Are you coming today?" And I'm about the kid's like, "No, I'm in Canada."
No, I'm in Sicily. I'm in what? Yes, I'm in Sicily the next 9 days. Didn't I tell you, Coach? Like, I know. That used to drive me bonkers. I've learned with age to kind of let that stuff go, but oh my goodness, it's it can just drive you bonkers if you let it get to you. So before we dive into the topic today, what do you think is going to be your biggest obstacle, and what do you think is going to be the easiest thing about making that transition?
So for me, I think the hardest thing will be just the speed of the game. I think just adjusting to that, and all the extra adjustments I'm going to have to make in game, and the extra things I'm going to have to teach in practice, because at modified level, the goal was to teach a lot, but you don't always have enough time to get through everything you want. You're maybe spending double the amount of time that you thought you would on on an offense or defense. So really now knowing, okay, the expectation is I need to get through that at JV and get them where they need to be.
It's yeah, I refer to it as like a rock concert. It's just like the decision making that a basketball coach has to make is unlike any other, in my opinion. Because think about football, you have time between plays, and baseball, you have time between pitches, and basketball, and it's just, yeah,
right.
The
doing 10 things while you're standing on the bench, worried about your rotation, trying to read the defense.
Right. And then you'll catch yourself 3 minutes in watching. You can't watch the game. Like
right.
You can't, like you got to analyze the game. So it's so hard. It's the reason I don't watch as much basketball as I used to. I'll watch NBA finals and stuff, but during the season, it's so hard because I turn on a game and I'm not watching it. I'm like, analyzing it, and it takes away that. It's like for my team, it's interesting. All right, so we're going to talk about team culture and building relationships. So that is a 16-hour discussion, but why that topic?
For me, I've kind of come into coaching with kind of like a mental health background, and that has really shown me like the importance of everything you do related to connecting with the players, forming mutual respect, and then creating a positive team culture. And a lot of that has led me to increased success. And even if we're not doing well one season, the team morale is still up. And I think that is very difficult to get to that point, and I found that just so important.
Probably gets harder as you go up because it gets more and more competitive too.
Yeah.
Just by the nature of the beast, it's like that's just and if you don't win, I hate to say it, but they do fire you. It's like, even though it is high school athletics, they do you gotta, if you're to have 16 losing seasons, the wagons will circle quickly. It's reality. All right, so you wanted to share your screen to talk about some stuff. People that are listening, I will definitely put this down in the show notes. Coach is going to just talk about a couple things, and then if you're watching or listening on podcast, then I'll put the link on put the link down below so people can kind of see it. But we put it on YouTube.
So I have just a few slides here.
Yeah.
But a couple on building relationships, and then a couple more geared toward team culture. So our first one here, just really talking about, okay, building that connection, how to use it, and then when to maybe take it a little further, and if you're going to be real hard on them, and when you need to do that. So for me, I think from day one, you need to be working on that relationship, even in off-season open gyms, summer league, like we said. Like, I think that's the time for team bonding and building those connections with your kids. Because
and why? I mean, I agree. I mean, this is literally. I mean, why do you think it's so important in that stretch?
I think you have more time there. I think it's a little more laid back in those times. Once you hit November, December, like, we're off and running. Like, there's so little time, and like I mentioned, so much to get through. You always have to find that time, but in summer, you really can take a lot more time. If in an open gym you spend a little extra time just shooting around, and they can bond a little through that.
I think it's not as authoritarian in the summer. I think that's the point is I think it's and this is what I've noticed in 30 plus years is you're right. It's more laid back.
Mhm.
I'm more more relaxed. I'm not worried about the stack of tests I'm sitting over there that I got to grade, and I'm not worried about lesson planning for. So I think everyone is in a different state of mind a little bit too. So
Mhm.
I think it's where you are in your journey for you and the player. I think there's lots of different factors that go into that, but I think most, and that's what hurt us during COVID, is those relationship things during those months
Mhm.
were different, like they were,
Right.
because you couldn't have the connections. Zoom is fine, but Zoom is not really a connection. Zoom's fine when you know someone. I was talking to a coaching friend the other day. It's like we already know each other. There's already a connection. So the Zoom can do some of those things. But
Mhm.
when you're trying to build it, I agree. When you're building those connections, that in person, face to face eye contact thing is so important in the summer works. Anytime that you're not deciding how much they're playing, is always good, I think. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, and I view summer as a, like, if I'm gonna be extremely hard and strict, they're not gonna come.
No, they're
Especially
gonna
the
go
age
hang out
I'm
with their
coaching.
girlfriend at the beach. They're not coming. Are you kidding
Right.
me? Yeah.
They want to come because it's fun, not because they have to. So I always try to make it something they're choosing to come to. For me, I never enforce summer, because as soon as you start enforcing it, I feel like it becomes a chore, and I never want them to feel like basketball is a chore for them.
Right. Yeah. You can use some good parental guilt sometimes a little bit. That works sometimes, but it's hard in the summer. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's difficult.
But yeah, so building relationships, like, I I feel like if your kids don't don't believe in what you're saying or don't respect what you're saying, they're not going to buy into the drill you're teaching, the offense they're trying to run. They're going to do their thing. They're going to do whatever they want on offense if they're not believing what you're doing. And in all my time working with kids now, you really learn quickly, if they don't like you or if they don't respect you, they're not going to they're not going to do anything you're asking.
They're not
So
gonna
you
listen
really
to
just
you. They're not gonna listen to you.
yeah,
I
right.
mean, I've noticed that. I mean, that's my classroom. It's like I have to build. I mean, I tell dad jokes. I mean, my classes know about me as a person because as soon as I'm connected with them, then they can learn about standard deviation that they don't necessarily care about, as much as, oh, I don't want to, there's a connection here with Mr. Collins, so let's see how we can make this work. um yeah, so using connections, so go to the next stage. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so for me, I like to use those connections if we were going through a difficult time. So like, my first year coaching, we had to let a player go from the team, because attendance, they weren't showing up for 2.5 weeks without telling me, and had to let him go.
That's
And
a pretty long
a long
time.
time. I really was lenient on that one and gave him so many chances, and yeah, it didn't work out, so I let him go, and there was a lot of backlash from the guys on the team who felt like, oh, like, well, he told me. I'm like, he can't tell you, he needs to tell me.
Right.
Um, so we I took that time, instead of just letting that kind of fester and build and have tension. I had them all come in, and we spent probably like 25 minutes discussing this. Like, I said, I want to hear how you feel. Like, the decision is made, but I want you to understand where I'm at, and I want to hear where you're at. Um, so really just having that conversation, that dialogue, being open, not trying to like have the kids hide and talk behind my back, like I'm sure they did, but
They
either
do
way,
anyway, but
keep it
it's
as
like
as
yeah.
open as we can,
Yes.
and then end that conversation, and then the issue's over from there, and then we can move on. For me, like, yes, we spent 25 minutes of that practice, but I think we saved a ton of time if we wouldn't have addressed that, because we would have had to keep bringing that back where we can take that time and then put it to bed.
Yeah, I think the problem is if you don't face that, it's like one bad apple can mess up the whole bushel. I mean, it's like it doesn't matter. Like you have to deal with those things, and as you go along in your coaching career too, like I can even see it. I can see it in like in their eyes. Like I can see when people are upset about playing time or they're upset. And I confront. I mean, you got to confront that right away, because if it festers, it's going to hurt your team. It's not going to build your team. And that's where like you wrote on there, that's where the drama comes, and that's where it's like, and they're talking whatever, they're friends, they're going to talk. I mean, I talk about my admin in my school, so it's not like people don't talk. You expect that, but how are you dealing with it is the bigger issue, I think.
Right.
All right, so why don't you talk about the situational approach to the authoritative, when you have to be authoritative.
Right. Yeah. So for me, I'm not a coach who is in practice yelling. Like that just doesn't work for me. Um I I liked any issue, even if a kid is doing something I'm upset about, I'm just talk to them. And the times where I'm gonna probably step it up a little bit are anytime there's like bullying, putting other kids on the team down. Like that's something that I feel like if not taken seriously, that's just going to destroy your entire season. Like we had an issue last season where a few weeks in, there were a few of the top guys who were just always ragging on the guys who weren't playing as much, counting their playing time, and we were able to shut that down from that, and I think that allowed us to kind of grow as a team. Where if like we mentioned, like if unaddressed, you're gonna just let that kind of destroy your team chemistry. So like I mentioned, arguing too, and then also to like build your players up. Um, if like in a way where other people are kind of tearing them down, whether it's parents, like family members, anything they're hearing in school, just being firm in how you believe and like definitive of no, I feel like you're playing this way. Like I see you every day in practice, every day in a game. Like being just very confident of how you feel and sharing that with the player, because that I think that can go a long way in kind of boosting their confidence.
Yeah, it's interesting from someone that's got their youngest going off to college in like 4 days. There's two things. First of all, you can't I can't yell at my daughter about curfew if I don't talk to her about it beforehand. Like I you know what I'm saying? It's like, remember, you got to be home this time, blah, blah, blah. It's like there's no reason. I think sometimes if people, especially coaches, are authoritative after the fact. Well, no, we've already talked about you. Here's what our expectations are, and here's how you didn't follow them. If you don't have that set up, that's yes. And if your kid runs into the street and they're 5 years old, you got to step up. Because you got to make a quick and swift decision at that point about okay, that's and I think society has changed in that way, which is a good thing. When it's like you said, when it's safety, when it's those kind of things, shoot, I'm stepping in. But I agree. I think some of those steps, understanding when you have to, like I always tell my players, leaders remind before there's an issue. Like, so I said, and I always use the free throw example. I said, we're shooting a free throw. It's a big box out. You can't get mad at your teammates about not boxing out and finding a body unless you remind them before the thing. So I said, a leader would go to the two bigs that are in the low block and say, hey, remember, you got to get low. This is a big free throw. Make sure you get contact. I've got the free throw shooter, blah, blah, blah. I said, that's what the leader does. The leader doesn't yell at them after they don't box out, because you have to tell them beforehand. And that helps with that's what I think coaches sometimes miss is that I don't really want to step in. I want all of you to do it. You be that. You remind your teammate, hey man, remember coach said there's curfew tonight. We got to get home, blah, blah, blah. You guys do that rather than me. I will step in if I have to, because can only be one captain of the ship. But yeah, I agree. And it does. I was talking to a coach the other day too about when I usually have to, like, when you say we to boys, they think you're talking about the other guy. So if it's like we're not doing this, it's not me, it's him, kind of thing.
Always.
So,
Yeah,
so you have to, like, we're sitting in the locker room. I said, we're not boxing out. Every kid in that room thinks that I'm talking about someone else other than them. So there's times where you have to call them specifically out, but not in an embarrassing way. And when I really got to get on them, I'll pull them aside and it's like, come here. Like, I've done that with guards and things and blah, blah, blah. But I'm not going to do it in front of their friends. I'm not going to do it in front of that, just because I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want my principal coming in and screaming at me in front of my students.
Right, yeah.
I'm not going to do the same thing to them.
But I think that's ever, like, do have to address a kid for anything, like whether it's play or like whether they're arguing or talking while I'm going. I always try to pick a few.
Right.
Never single that one out.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. All right, so let's go on to the next one.
Sure. So this next one, really going into that communication piece of checking in with your players. And I try to do it 4 times during the season. Once at tryouts, and for tryouts, it's going to be the kids who are making the team and the ones who are not. But tryouts, I really try to come in if I am kind of expecting a player to not play much, maybe a few minutes a game. Probably going to have some games where they're not playing at all. I want them to know that going in. And
right.
I always make it a choice for them. Like, do you still want to be a part of the team, knowing that that's kind of going to be your role? And obviously things can go up, things can go down, but giving them that baseline of that's generally what I'm thinking at this point. And I felt that has helped with kids getting upset if they're not getting the playing time they deserve, because they kind of knew that going in.
I like that one. I've always done the other 3, the beginning kind of tryouts and before game 1 have kind of morphed into 1 for me, but I like, because I do talk to everyone at tryouts. I like that kind of maybe separation there, and then keep going. But I like that. I've always done that beginning one, but I like kind of how you separated that. It really depends. I talked to a coach the other day. They have 4 weeks before their first game, and I go, what? If in a high school, where was that? North Carolina, I think it was.
Okay.
It was like they have 4 weeks. It's like I got like 9 days, like 9
Yeah,
practices.
I think we have about 2 weeks.
Yeah. I go, whoa. So you would definitely have time in that longer stretch. Yeah.
And the reason I do tryout and before game 1, I feel like, especially for kids you don't know and like they're coming right into you at tryouts, you're just being exposed to them, just learning what they can do. And I think a lot can change in 2 weeks. Of maybe you told someone they're going to be like one of your role players off the bench, and now maybe another player rose up and you no longer have the minutes that you promised.
Right.
So really just readdressing that and kind of being clear of why. I never want to leave it up for debate or wonder why I'm not playing, why did my minutes go down, why did my minutes go up.
Yeah, I know. I like that because it does change. There can be a lot of changes between those 2 days of tryouts and that first game. A lot of role shifting and things like that. I agree.
And then midpoint, that is definitely a more involved one. I think you have a lot more to go off of. At that point, you're even bringing kind of their grades into it. If players are going to be ineligible or they're right on the border there. So trying to kind of get them back onto track in their academics, because you don't want to lose them. because usually that halfway point is probably about, for us, like 2 weeks before that marking period closes. And I think it's a good wake up call.
Yeah, I do that I do the midway point I usually, because it's over winter. I usually do mine over winter break, even though it's probably not quite midpoint, because I want time on that mid-season one.
Right.
Because let's say you play 24 games, you've probably played at least 10 at that point. You can have a pretty good sense of where they fall. Things change, but injuries happen, people get better. But I think that is if you want to have a winning season, that mid-season one is a difficult one. It's a difficult. Those are courageous conversations, which I refer to them as. They are difficult to have, but I'm brutally honest on those mid-seasons.
Yeah, I think you have to be.
Yeah, it's like you sit there and you go, you're 12, you're not going to play. Like, and here's what you should be focused on, and here's how you should try to get better. Here's how you should. Those are hard. They are very difficult. I agree.
Definitely tough. And then the other thing I try to tie into mid-season is I want their view of the season at that point. I want, maybe they feel like they would be benefiting from a certain type of drill that we haven't done a ton of, or I want their feel on the offense, their feel on the defense. So really getting that feedback from me too, going forward. And I like what you said about doing it over Christmas break, because then you have that time to adjust as well. If maybe the week you come back, you want to sprinkle in a few extra drills, or maybe you talk to a few kids at that mid-season point and they're just so confused on the offense and defense, and maybe you haven't known that at that point. So maybe you now need to like spend more time on that.
Right. So what do you do in your end of season?
End of season, it kind of, for me, it's similar to midway. But I want end of season to definitely feel more, definitely a little more closure in there, definitely more encouragement and like hope for the future. Where mid-season, it's like you got to work for it.
Right.
Where end of season, you got a lot of time now, but definitely giving that positive feedback of things they did well, and like really hammering that in. I had a coach when I played in high school, and he was the first coach I ever had and the only coach I've ever had who did this. And he, at end of the season, he pulled me aside, told me exactly why I wasn't playing much, told me what to do, how to fix it, what style of play in a game, how to change that. And next season I came in, I did that, and I played more. And that was like eye opening for me, of just that open communication. And like he told me exactly what the reason was, and I fixed it, and then I got that reward for it. And I think that is just something that I really focus on in the end of season, just being very clear with them.
Yeah, I find the tryout one, and even before game one or after game one, there's still a ray of hope for just about everybody on the roster at that point. I find the midseason, the end of the season are probably the most, if you're building culture and building relationships, because you're having that courageous one. But the end of the season, couple of bits of advice I would give coaches is, first of all, I would have someone else in the room with me when I do all of these. Just because I can tell you a story about my son. I had an end of season one with my son after his junior year, and what I said and what he came home and told his mom, I said, were two separate things. Maybe it was between sophomore and junior, whatever. But it was, we laugh about it now, but it's like, that's not what I said. I had three other coaches in that room, Drew. I did not say that to you. He thought I was told me never play. And I said, no. I said, here's what you have to do if you want to play. But
I know those sounds so great in your head, and like even when it's coming out, but you never know how they're going to take it.
How they take it, or what you said. So I like to make the end of the season a little bit. I like to talk about statistics. I like to talk about concrete. I like to hand them a piece of paper. I like to make that, the midseason tends to be a little bit more just communication, talking, but
Mhm.
I I never have enough time on the end of seasons. Usually we leave like 15, 20-minute book sessions, which can be really long when you're running through like, 15 to 18 kids. It can be
Mhm.
3 or 4 days. But I never get done early with them
No, I
because
I always run late on those
I
too.
know.
Tryouts and end of season, I take way too much time.
Yeah. So just for coaches that are listening, it's like I think that if you want to build a culture, you want to build a program, you want to build moving forward that end of season, because you're right, it's more positive, and here's what you did well, and here's what you didn't do well, and here's your plan, and here's what we're going to do in the off season to make ourselves better and make the program better, and it's like blah blah blah, blah. And what do you feel and where are you playing, and it's like it is literally a conversation. And yeah, they're very tiring, but they're very productive, I would say, very productive.
Mhm.
um all right, let's keep moving on, coach. I have
All
some more
right.
questions for you
Yeah,
too.
kind of jumping into team culture. Um, so I think one of the biggest areas of team culture is having strong leaders on your team, and whether it's a captain or not a captain, but having those kids who can really kind of pull everyone together. And I love to really include my captains and my leaders on my team, in the difficult, like, um, maybe I'll talk with them first about a difficult topic and then bring it to the whole team, just to kind of get their feedback, and then adjust what I'm kind of saying to the whole team. Um, but I feel like I don't if the team is arguing, me telling them to stop over and over again is only going to do so much.
Right,
Where if they're coming from their peers and kids that they may even look up to, then I think it hits home a little harder.
right. And we can name as many captains as we want. I mean, telling you, but they know. They
Yes.
know who's the lead. I mean, to be honest with you, it's like, yeah. I think team captains are the most overrated thing in all of sports. Because there's a difference. You in the center circle, you have team leaders and team captains. They're not always necessarily the same thing.
And they sometimes change.
And they sometimes change. They
You
really
might have a
do.
leader in the beginning that maybe kind of goes the other way.
Yes, yes, I know. I think that's where it's in it's a very important pivot and discussion when you figure out who you want to lead your group. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I like to refer to them as team leaders rather than team captains. But
Mhm.
yes, there's only one captain, and usually we have more than one leader.
Yeah.
Usually, if you're
Mhm.
thinking about a team, um, yeah, I love that. I love that kind of the mindset of how you can kind of go and tackle that is again, all this is, if you want to, I mean, if you want a winning program, all this stuff is super important. It
Mhm.
really is. You said you had one more slide, I think. One
I
more you
do,
went?
yes.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to touch on, like, I could talk about this for so long. There's so many different things too, after a win versus after a loss. But after a win, I really like to you want to you want to give them critique and you want to give them things to work on. But I after a win, I know some coaches like to really they're almost harder on their team after a win than a loss. And I think I probably am in a way, but I always want them to feel good about that win when they leave. I don't want them to feel good coming off the court and then have me bring them down for all the things that I felt like, okay, we still got to work on this. I think it's important to point a few things out, like one or two, to improve in the future, but really acknowledge the great things in that game, acknowledge the highlights, and end on a positive note. Um, and then looking at a loss, I think it's important to be honest. And when usually when I address my team, it's not right after the game with all this. Usually it's the next day in practice.
Yeah, it's so
Um,
hard. They don't hear you. Coaches, they
no,
don't hear you. They
no,
they really don't.
they're looking at their parents ready to go. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're already out the door.
right.
They're mentally. So yeah, the following day I always try to do it. But for after a loss, make sure they know the negative just in a constructive way, and then always give praise for what went right. I never individually point out anyone specifically after a tough game. I think tough games are hard on everyone. It's not one player's fault.
Right.
And then just being supportive. And then also after a loss, I want to hear their feedback too. And a lot of it is them talking after a loss and getting their feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to process. It's like anything. Like I just short is better, to be honest with you, post games. It's better to learn lessons after a win than a loss. Let's just be real.
Yep.
But you know, you need failure in life to learn that. We all need that growth mindset. But yeah, I never had as good of feedback or long-term benefit after the game than when I go home, I walk the dog, I have something to eat, I sleep on it, and then the next day it's like, all right, we're gonna come back. We're they, you know, I'll walk them. Usually, what I'll do is like, especially if it's after a bad loss or a big loss or something like that, I won't say anything to them. We'll keep it really short after the game, and then we'll come to practice the next day. They'll all be shooting, kind of warming up, and then we'll just walk to my room and we'll talk then. And I'll spend as long as I need to. If I need to spend 30 minutes at that point, because I got their attention at that point.
Right.
It's like, well, let's talk about why this didn't work and why do we have, 22 turnovers? Well, that you're not going to win many games when you have 22 turnovers. So I think those are the things that you gotta kind of really dive into. I agree. Do you yeah, I just think both of those are big as far as, because they're more likely to listen at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we can close that out. I'll put this down below so if people want to see it. What do you think the hardest thing to teach is at practice?
I find like our general offense that we're running to be the hardest thing to really instill, because I think at the root of it, they just want to play kind of street ball, get open.
Right.
And I think that's what they want to do. And to really kind of shift them out of that can be difficult, especially with 7th, 8th graders who have never played organized basketball. That can be a really, really tough habit to break.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's a difficult, that shift is hard for them. And it's harder at the middle school level than any level, I'm telling you. It's
yeah. And at that point, you have a lot of egos and then some players who lack that confidence, and like I mentioned with like the connections and like just being aware of the personalities on your team. I think that's really important in navigating difficult things to teach and all that.
What how do you practice plan? How do you go about getting ready for practice? Like, what's your specific thing you do?
So for me, I mean,
I'm not talking like 30 minutes of it. I'm just talking about like, how do you grasp that, and then how will that change moving into like being a JV coach?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I always like in the summer, that's where I try to really hammer down, okay, these are the general things we got to work on. And I create practice plans, never end up following them because things change so much of
Right.
what you thought you needed to work on versus what you actually have to work on. But going into each day, trying to go off of the day before and figuring out what went right, what didn't go well, why it didn't go well, and how we can adjust.
How it can change.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. I've changed over the years too. I used to do it the night of. Now I tend to do it the morning after. I think you just gotta, like, for coaches, I think you just gotta get into a rhythm, like whatever works for you.
Right.
Like I'll map out my first week before the season because that's just what I do in the fall. But I'm going to tell you, there's 5 practices, 2 tryouts, 3 practices. I'll keep 2 of them probably.
Yeah.
And there are other I mean, just because, oh shoot, that didn't work, or oh crud, we need more work on that. So that's just the way it just kind of pivots for me. It's yeah. So I think for the young coaches or the coaches that are listening, you're just gonna have to that will take some time though to get some rhythm with that.
Mhm.
Is there one thing, did you coach during COVID?
I did not. Well, technically I did, not like the heat of it, but the kind of the first year where they were kind of coming back to school, 2021 I started.
2021. Okay, so you didn't have to go through. What explain about being a JV coach. Have you met with the head coach? What does that look like? How, are you having to learn new things? Because it's been a long time since I've been a JV coach, so that intrigues me.
So yeah, I met with the varsity coach, and he I think every coach has different things that they want to try, especially at the varsity level with the whole program. Um, and I mean, I believe in a lot of consistency throughout the whole program too. So trying to incorporate what he's running at varsity, and especially at JV, because a lot of those players might go up and down throughout the season depending on injuries, grades. I know in the past we've had players who have kind of bounced up and down the 2 levels.
You're
So
AAA in baseball. That's what you
yeah,
are. You're AAA, baby. You're
for
the
sure.
minor leagues.
Um, so just really making sure those players are kind of consistent on what they're learning to, and trying to run similar defense, similar offense, and um, just overall concepts. I
Yeah,
think that's important.
I love that. All right, so I'm going to jump into my rapid fire. What's just going to ask you some really quick questions. What's your favorite brand of actual basketball?
For me, I think Spalding. Uh,
Okay.
that's my go-to. I feel like it has the better bounce. We for At our school we have Wilson and Spalding, but I always prefer to Spalding.
I like Spalding too. If you go to one sporting event for free in the world, what would you go to and why?
Probably March Madness Final Four, but
Go.
Super Bowl is a close
I've
close.
been I've been to a couple Final Fours. It's unbelievable. You
Yeah.
should go. It's unbelievable. One word to describe your ideal player.
That's tough. I'll say leader.
Okay. One thing you do to relax.
I'll go for a run.
Favorite pregame or postgame meal.
Ooh, a big pasta dish.
A big pasta dish. Okay. Pre or post or both.
Generally post. I usually don't eat a ton before.
I don't either. Do you have any superstitions?
Not really. I mean, my first year we went undefeated, and I did not say the word undefeated the whole year, so maybe that.
That's a superstition. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, one coaching technique you think's important.
Um, I would just say, uh, I think communication, just
I
as
was
a
gonna
technique.
say I was gonna jump in soon. I would say you just talked about it. I would
Yeah.
guess you that's what you would have said. Um, if you could describe your perfect player in 5 words or less.
Ooh. I would say coachable, hardworking, honest. I want them to give me feedback. Um, I'll give leader again, and then I'll go for the fifth. Um,
That's okay. Hardworking, we can count that as 2 if you
yeah,
want.
all right,
Okay.
we'll count that.
We'll count that as 2. Best player of all time.
MJ, gotta
Okay.
go MJ.
Uh if you could only teach one skill at practice, what would you teach?
I think I think defense. I think
Okay.
general defense.
Okay. Shot clock, yes or no?
Yes.
If you could change one thing about the game, what would you change?
Oh, I would change. Stumping me on this one. I would definitely change Flopping. I hate flopping.
Ooh, that's a good one. They're trying to do that internationally.
They are, yeah.
One thing that helped you become a better coach.
I think just always being open to hear from other coaches and hear other people's journeys and understand.
Yep. You can win in multitude of ways, trust me. Charge circle, yes or no?
No.
Best game you've seen in person.
We're talking basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I mean, I've only been to one NBA game.
Okay.
But and I'll go with this. So University of Buffalo, where I'm at, I went to the MAC championship for them to get to the tournament, and that was a great one. They won by 3, and
That's it. Yeah.
it was a nail biter.
Oh, that's a good one. Favorite quote or saying?
My favorite quote by an author I like. He's actually a principal. But quote would be, I have it on my wall, but I have it blocked.
It's okay.
Check real quick. Yeah, quote. So life is about the opportunity that you get to impact the world around you, to make a difference, to leave a legacy.
I always ask my students what the meaning of life is, and eventually we come around to like, are you leaving this place better than you found it, kind of thing. Yes. Quarters or halves?
I like quarters.
Okay. Best basketball coach of all time.
We'll go Popovich.
Okay. Best team of all time.
I would say MJ's Bulls. I think the whole dynasty.
That's pretty good. Jump ball, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. That's the wrong answer, but okay.
Is it?
Yes. That's my point in life, is to get rid of the jump ball. Because there's one a game and the officials are bad at throwing it. No one practices it. It should just be universal. The visiting team gets the ball, alternating possession. Done.
I wouldn't hate it.
Yeah. The NBA is the only place where they actually do every jump ball in the US. It's like, well, okay, then let's go back. If we're gonna do it, then let's go back. Why do we like?
You're right. It doesn't make a ton of sense.
It's like, pick one. That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't care. If we're gonna jump it, let's jump everything. If we're not, then let's go alternating possession.
Right.
It's one of my pet peeves. I just don't get it. The shot clock, I don't really care. The other stuff, I don't really care. But it's just like, why are we keeping this? No one has the circles anymore and gyms anymore. They don't paint them anymore.
Yeah.
It's not coming back. So it would make a lot of strategy, I think.
If we got, you're starting the game with that ball.
Yeah, so I know I'm starting, and you're starting on defense.
Yeah, that would be
let's go. It'd be
cool.
The chess match cool part would be very cool. One book you'd recommend?
I actually have it next to me. This book called Relentless. It's by a school principal. It's the same guy who gave me my quote. But it's all about how he is kind of changing how education should be and adapting his school through his own experiences and transforming the culture. And I really apply like the culture aspects to my coaching as well.
What's his last name?
Brewer, Brewer.
So this has nothing to do with basketball,
It
but
is not. But for
no. I'm just saying the whole K through 12 educational system, from someone that's been in it this whole life, needs to be nuked. It's broken. It's wrong.
Yeah.
We're not teaching kids stuff they need. It's just like, but it's not gonna, like, you haven't been teaching long enough. Everything moves about like a snail in education. So yes, if I was running for president, my platform would be, we're nuking K through 12 education.
Right. Just
We're new. We're just starting
Get
over.
rid of it, start over. Yeah.
Because to be honest with you, no one really needs calculus unless they're going to be I'm a math teacher. No one really needs calculus unless they're going to be an engineer or a doctor.
Right.
It's a gatekeeper. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no one really needs it.
Yeah.
So why are we teaching stuff they don't anyway? I understand the conceptual and the math part, but it's like, come on, it's like 5th year of high school math. No one needs that.
Yeah. You at that point, you know the direction you're heading.
Right. So then you should take it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't want my bridges falling down, and I want my engineers to know their math. Absolutely. Yeah. But the average person does not need that. They probably don't even need algebra 2 in the world we live in now. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's a side note. Education thing. All right. So my last question for every podcast that I do is, and you're a puppy, so I don't know if this is going to be as relevant, but if you could go, I always say, if you go back to your younger self, this is more for the old farts like me, but if you could go back to maybe your first year coaching, or what would you tell yourself? What have you learned over the stretch of your coaching career at this point? I'll word it that way.
I think I would go back and tell myself that because when I first started, I was very oriented of like, we need to get to all of this in our practice. We need to learn this in this amount of time. And I think understanding that things change so fluidly, and it's never going to be what you expect. Every day is going to be different. And
it's like teaching. I go in with a plan every day.
Yeah.
Half the time that plan's like gone by 3rd hour. It's like, what are you talking about? Like,
right,
this didn't work. And usually it's my fault.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this didn't work. I didn't do it right. Mm-hmm. Okay, how am I gonna change this? Or, oh crud, tomorrow I gotta go back and recircle because they got Mr. Collins off topic, or I don't know, right. Something, or I didn't do the right thing, or I said the wrong stuff. It didn't work. So I agree.
I've definitely had things where like I'll teach a whole thing and I'll say one thing wrong and it'll throw the whole thing off, and then we'll have to go back to it. Yeah.
It's crazy. I tell people that like there's people that are underappreciated in the world, like nurses and both educators, blah, blah, blah. But I tell people, if you think teachers don't need a break in the summer, and you don't think you should come in and go into a classroom for a month and see what it's like. Because I even teach in high school. The number of questions, teachers get no breaks, and the number of questions that we get asked in a day would make most people's heads explode.
And after the day,
it's like, yes. And some of them are just stupid, but it's like no one in the workplace gets to ask as many questions as an educator. Never.
And like that question probably could have waited until tomorrow, not 10 p.m. tonight.
Yes. It always can. All right. Well, thank you for being on. I appreciate it, Coach.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Hey, Coach, so happy you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe and like. Go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better.